Order, please. This regular meeting of the Joshua Basin Water District Board of Directors for October 18 is now in session at 17:30, 5:30. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is right there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Determination of a quorum, General Manager Johnson, roll call, please.
President Fleming,
Present.
Vice President Sewell,
Here.
Director Fick,
Here.
Director Charlesburg,
Here.
Director Short.
Here. Thank you very much. All directors are present in the boardroom. We have a quorum. Approval of the agenda. We're going to make a modification on that. Item number something or other. Item number 8, thank you, is going to be moved to the very end of the meeting. So
Oh,
that's the closed session.
okay.
So we don't have
Oh, I
folks,
see.
waiting for us to.
The reports and comments will come before that, yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Sorry.
We're in formal way. So anyway, with that adjustment, do I hear a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you very much. Second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Yeah. Public comment. Don't see any. This designated time is for members of the public to provide comments on any district-related matter, whether appearing on the agenda or not. Under provisions of the Brown Act, the board is prohibited from taking action on items not listed on the agenda. At the discretion of the board president, comments on a particular agendized item may be deferred until that item is heard. Is there anybody on the TV either? Any written, electronic, or email comments?
None to me know.
Thank you very much. Public comment time is now closed. Consent calendar is items expected to be routine in nature and non-controversial, to be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. If the board member would like an item handled separately, it will be removed from the consent agenda for separate action. The items in the consent calendar consist of draft meeting minutes for September 20, draft meeting minutes for October 4, and the check register for August, and also the salary schedule. Does anyone want to remove an item from the consent calendar?
Those are the minutes, right?
While you're looking, Jane, go ahead.
I'd like to pull the check register for August. I have a couple of quick things.
So moves, proceed, please.
Before we
Yeah.
go on to that item, can we approve what's left on the consent calendar or if anything else is going to be pulled?
Oh, yeah.
I don't need anything after. Wait. No, I'm good. Wait. No, I have a question on the check register as well, page 2.
Same one?
I guess
There's only one, huh?
okay.
Very well. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar with item C separated?
I'll motion.
Thanks, Dave.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. We actually do a voice vote on that, or is it just?
No, that was perfect.
Okay. So the check register is now up. We'll go with the vice president first.
Okay, I just had a question. It's on page 11. And it is like the fifth one down, additional discretionary ER contribution. So this, according to this looks to me like we made an extra contribution of $35,803.
That one.
So I'm wondering, one, whose discretion is this? And remind me what ER stands for.
Employer.
Employer. Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So I'm very curious about this.
Yes, okay. So if you recall from our discussions about either CalPERS and or the audit, there is an unfunded accrued liability that's always in place with CalPERS, with the CalPERS retirement plan. And that is impossible to pay off, but you can pay it down. And this is what we have been doing for the last 3 years. It's presented as part of the budget presentation and approved as part of the budget. And so in this case, we started with 3 years ago, we started with this program. And when we started, we were on track. If we maintained this process of prepaying or paying down the unfunded accrued liability, we were on track to save about $148,000 by shortening the amortization schedule from 30 years to 15 years. And so we're trying to stay on track with that. This is an interesting, the unfunded accrued liability is an interesting item because it changes, it's very volatile. Changes based on interest rates that are earned on the CalPERS investments and on the various actuarial factors that they use to calculate what we owe for the plan. And so things like the mortality rate.
Oh,
and,
it's actuarial. Yeah.
Yes, and how early people retire, how long they live, you know.
Could we get a
factor.
report on everybody's expected lifespan, please?
Oh. Well, yeah, that's, we could maybe get an actuary to come out and talk to us. They're really fun. So that's what that is. I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Well, I mean, so where's whose discretion is it that we're paying this extra? Is that,
That's
it's
what it's
part of the
called.
budget?
It's
Okay.
part of the budget. It's proved as part of the budget. It's just called an additional discretionary payment.
And so it's all that in the budget all the time. So, yeah.
Yes.
So it's just
Yeah.
discretion of JBWD. So we don't always do it, but we've been doing it always lately.
Yes, we've been doing it for the last 3 years, and we can also commit to this alternate shorter amortization schedule. But we haven't done that. We've chosen instead to make this decision year by year. So if we committed to that amortization schedule, then we would be locked into those higher payments. In this case, we have the option to make that additional payment or not, depending on how the budget looks.
So the other amortization one would be the 15-year
Maybe
or
30 years.
30, okay, that we would be locked into that.
We would be locked in. Well, we could
The payments.
amortize it.
Yeah.
We are locked into the 30 right now, and then we make those additional discretionary payments. But we could re-amortize and commit to that 15-year schedule instead. And
But we don't
then
wanna
we
do
would
that.
be Locked into
Ah.
those higher payments.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, and so we had this budget and we had this amount in the budget.
Correct.
I should have checked that. All right.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, but this unfunded accrued liability, I mean, I had to write it down, even though you said it 4 times, because, it's things I have to study and think about. Unfunded accrued liability, and accrued is always so confusing. So unfunded accrued, like, explain that again.
Well, on our financial statements, it's actually called net pension liability. And
Oh,
so
okay.
that might be an easier term.
Okay.
To to remember. And that again is a volatile figure. It changed.
It's dynamic.
We went through, it's very dynamic
Okay.
depending on what happens with the interest rates. For example, I went through the 2022 financial statements, and In 2021, our net pension liability was $672,000. In 2022, because the interest earnings were so favorable that year, our net pension liability went down to $81,517. So you can see how much it can fluctuate depending on those factors. Yeah, and this year we're on track. It's projected at 822,000. And we'll talk more about that when we have the audit presentation in
Okay.
December.
I'll wait.
We'll talk more about that CalPERS net pension liability. It's always an interesting topic, I think, for everyone.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So the, whatever that, what's the principal or that amount, that fluctuating amount, we pay an interest on that,
We pay interest on that.
and that's the motivation for paying it down.
Yes, correct.
Okay,
Yes, so we're on track to save 148,000 in interest if we maintain this pace over the 15 years.
Director Charlesburg.
I was just curious on how the amount is, how you come to the amount, the 35,803.
It's actually based on their amortization schedule. So if we were to lock into that 15-year amortization schedule, we would have a higher amount that we have to pay. What we do is just pay the difference between what we're committed to pay and what we would have to pay if we locked into that higher payment amortization schedule.
Okay, so it's
So
determined by the
it's
schedule.
difference between what we're committed to and what we would be committed to if we re-amortized. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Anything else? Director Doolittle?
She's done.
Okay. I had a question also on 11, and it's more for public knowledge of under City National Bank pipeline replacement loan SERP. Would you explain that a little bit?
Sure, that's our CIRP Capital Improvement Replacement Program loan that we took out in 2018, I believe it was. It was a $3 million, $10,000 loan. And we are in I believe this is the 5th year that we were paying on this. It's our annual payment.
Okay,
And we actually Sarah and I have talked about for, I don't think the next budget cycle, but the subsequent one, because at the 7-year mark, we have the opportunity to prepay that loan and save some interest. And so that's something we'll look at as that budget approaches.
cool.
How long is that loan?
That loan is 15 years, I think. Yeah,
Can't prepay until you get to the 7th year.
right.
Oh,
It's not an option.
I had another, just pointed out, I thought that we had talked about this before on page 13 at the bottom. The Vermeer vacuum excavator. I know we talked about this tool being important, and I thought we had already seen this somewhere. Maybe I'm just
In the budget.
in the budget. Oh, okay. So we actually paid for it now.
Right.
Okay. But it is a tool that's being used, obviously, it has been used, yeah. One other little thing I did want to point out that we bought another new Toyota 4x4 on page 14. So how many new vehicles do we have now, or fairly recent?
There's 5 total vehicles, 4 that were in the budget, and 1 was for me that was per my contract.
But we haven't seen that one in the,
Yes, they're all here.
oh, really?
Yes, so we got very lucky this year. Previous year, it would take months, sometimes
Right.
9 months to get a vehicle. And
Right.
fortunately, I was down looking at the Toyota dealership. I made contact there, and it ended up working out. And we got all of our vehicles relatively quickly.
But this is not the one you're driving.
Correct. Yeah, I think this is the one.
This is a 4x4. You're driving a 4x4?
Yes.
Cool. Okay.
All of our vehicles are 4x4.
Oh, okay. I hadn't seen that on the other ones, or I didn't remember seeing on the,
All of them
on
have to be just to the nature of our district.
sure. Okay, cool.
Recalling that it's in the contract that when the vehicle is here, and she's not using it, and we need it to
Oh.
provide some function or purpose,
Yeah,
then it can be used, so it should be a 4x4.
yeah, okay. Okay, good. So are we, do we have all the new trucks we need for the moment? Okay,
What's scheduled for surplus this year? Yes.
good. Okay, that's all I had.
Thank you. Anything further? Do I hear a motion to approve item 5C, check register August 2023?
I'll move that we approve the check register for August.
A second,
Seconded.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 7, presentations. For information purposes only on subjects covered, not covered on the agenda. No action will be taken. First up, public outreach report presented by Kathleen Radnich, public information consultant.
Good evening. Thank you for receiving this information, which you may want to be jotting down some of the dates I'll be throwing out. But to begin, I want to point out that we're back in 52% on people reading our newsletter, which is light years ahead of other government newsletters. So I knew that would happen after summer, but it wasn't too bad. It's like 48%, but still like people. The September 30th Saturday sandbagging event, how many saw the wonderful press coverage we had in the newspaper? Okay, for those of you who weren't here, and I have to say up front, thank you, President Sloan, for bailing me out when the big fire truck drove off into the sunset 5 minutes after they got here. And everyone stood around looking at me like, what the? We had a pile of sand. Thank you very much for the pile of sand.
Where did you find that? No.
But we had everyone gathered around and they got out of the truck and they started opening up the sandbags, moving them out. They're about ready to do a presentation. And believe it or not, there's a lot to know. And the captain was getting in his jumping, whatever they call them. And I thought, oh, that'll look good for a picture. Oh, cool. And then he jumped in his truck. The other 2 fire people jumped in the truck and they drove off. And they didn't even say goodbye. I stood there like, okay. So President Sloan took my camera and a lady got a little camping shovel out of the trunk of her car and we went forward and we gave a great presentation and then the fire truck showed up right when we were done. And it was at the time. It was great though because they were wonderful people. They helped other people fill up their sandbags and stuff. So it was a good event. It just kind of wasn't the way I planned it. The winterizing class, for those of you who know new people in the area and they haven't addressed winterizing their pipes and other items to get ready for winter, will be November 9th at 6 p.m. It's a virtual presentation. And it is sponsored by Mojave Water Agency and the Mojave Desert Resource Conservation District. Okay, now the plant sale has a change of date. We always have it the last Sunday in March. However, Joshua Tree National Park is in the process right now of renewing our 3rd 5-year contract. I believe it was initially signed in 2012. When I did the math on that, it doesn't work out. So there's been some gaps in there and delays. The contract has to go through some hierarchy beyond the national park. I'm not, but they call them solicitors. I call them lawyers, but they are at a very high level. And it takes them no less than 6 months, no less. That's the best we've ever done in getting this to go through. Well, we did the math and our plant sale is exactly 6 months and 1 week later. So we were a little nervous and it also turns out that the last Sunday in March this year is Easter Sunday. So we decided to bump it up 1 week. We're within the time frame that way. If it goes longer, we're still under contract with the park because they have almost double the amount of plants that we will be offering this year.
Great.
About 500 some,
Oh, my
and
goodness.
even then there might be more than that. So we have moved the date will be March 24th. Turns out to be Palm Sunday, but that's okay. We've done it on Palm Sunday before and there's no issue. For some of you, you know that the Western Joshua Tree status did not go through the federal, but it is at a state level protected. And we in our wildcrafting class used to teach propagation of the Joshua tree. In dialogue with the national park, there's some mixed feelings about the fact that, you know, they like our communities maintaining and protecting the Joshua tree. But with development and growth on the, you know, on the docket for the future, they want to make sure there's a mechanism in place to help keeping, you know, the sustainability of the trees, more trees coming in, for the yucca moth, for fertilization of the plant, all that stuff, pollination, so. And so I contacted the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they have the authority to, I guess, issue a variance, give us permission, whatever. And we are in serious dialogue, and there is a potential open door for our water district MOU with the national park, our program to take that on. And I will give you more as it goes forward, but just like the solicitors for the MOU, going through the state on this is very involved. And it's very encouraging, but we don't have an answer yet, and I'm looking forward to that answer, just like everyone else. So that is kind of something we're looking forward to possibly this year. All right, the Citizens Advisory Council will be meeting November 14th, and we are actively recruiting. I still reach out to our board. If you know of anyone in your areas, your divisions, that you feel the person has a passion for water and they like to look at situations that we're all dealing with, please, right now we have a brand new application. It is online, and we would like you to reach out to them now so that we can get them on board in the near future.
We have received one application so far, so your work is working, and we'll be bringing those to board first board meeting in November, so that we can get them on before the next CAC meeting.
So be thinking, because you know, water is, it's going to be everyone's concern, and we want people who are out there in the community, who interact with the community, to give us feedback. Okay, so now the district tours are coming back, and we have slated February 22nd and 29th. Those are both Thursdays, 1 week apart. Jeremiah. We'll be working on it. The tours are always in the morning, and they're always well received. We will get more to you, but most of you, unless you did it prior as the customer or on the CAC, we have new board members, so we invite you to definitely book it and speak with Sarah on that, or Lisa. Also, the Great Shakeout, traditionally we participate in it, we have a booth in it, but because of situations outside of our concern, there's been some flux between some of the organizations concerned. They couldn't get it together in time. So I encourage everyone here to think about your preparedness level, because we don't have a big to-do to make you do that. But you've got to be prepared at home if you're going to be able to respond here. Lastly, I received a message on my phone this morning from a customer residing at the Quail Village Apartments. And she was out walking her dog at 6:15 a.m. when she encountered a recruit at their site. And her message on my phone was, they were the nicest people, all government employees.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
You have any questions? That's my report.
Oh, I do have, you mentioned the district tour is on the 22nd and 29th. Is that or the 29th?
There's two.
There are two.
We have
All right.
set up, here's the thing, the part of the tour. Excuse me, it's just allergies. Part of the tour requires, or we have chosen to always share about our recharge bonds. And the recharge bonds do not allow for a very long size bus. So we have to get two
Yeah.
mini coaches.
Yeah.
So we have to get the mini buses because they can't make those turns, the longer bus. So it requires us to do two tours that way. And they only hold about 25 people. So that's why I encourage you guys to look at the dates and book it.
I highly recommend them. I went on two before I was on the
You are
board.
part of one. They do work
But-
one.
But I think it's really a good thing to do, and there's a lot of new stuff that's been added. That's why even if you've been on a tour in the past, I think it'd be good to do it now.
Any other questions? That's my report otherwise.
I did have one question. It was just a thought. I have reached out to some people. I'll reach out to some more regarding the CAC. But I'm just wondering if we've contacted people, those ratepayers that we know of who participated in the rate study workshops. So anyway, I just thought it, might be useful to, contact them via an email or something and say, we remember your passion about this and we need people like you.
That's a good thought, although we couldn't have a sign in. It was, my understanding is that it was not appropriate to have a sign in list at that event, that workshop.
We can't require people to come to a board meeting and sign it.
Right. So we don't have their names listed. Some of these people do frequent our booth on Saturdays and speak often. And we do address just about all of them when they start getting passionate about water, we talk about it. And many don't want to get involved, they just, well, you feel it. Okay. So, but we're very actively recruiting as best we can, but it's not just numbers, we want the right people who really have a passion for water, and they're there to represent people as you are. So that's what we're working on.
And could you please repeat the tour dates?
The tour dates are February 22nd and 29th. And they start at 8 a.m. And for those of you who haven't done it, what happens is you come into our boardroom and we first do a light continental while we talk about the district in general. And then by 8:30, I'm pacing, watching for the bus, and they show up, and from 8:30 to 8:45, restrooms and get on the bus. That's how it works. And then we're on the road until about 12:15. It averages right around 12:15. Get off, and a lot of times people who haven't been on the tour know that they want to take a tour of the garden, which I have a docent ready to go for that right at the end. And it's really a full 3 hours of show and tell. And answering questions. This is when people can really answer questions, ask questions directly, and then be answered from the experts.
So staff will be at different stations.
There's some who, they may be on the bus.
Oh, okay.
It just depends on what we end up deciding to do this year and how we're doing it. So.
But yes, that's generally how it is. There's staff at different stations, different demonstrations. It's pretty much.
comprehensive, actually. So. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, 7B on the agenda, Leif. Right there. Leif performance report presented by Ann Roman.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You can't whisper at me, I can't hear you, you have to yell.
I just see salary schedule, so I was just wondering about that.
So it's on the consent calendar.
Oh, it was. Okay, never mind. Sorry.
It's always appropriate to prompt the presider, because we want to do this accurately. So speak up when you do.
Okay.
At any rate, late performance report presented by Ann Roman, Director of Finance.
All right, thank you very much. We have the first of 3 annual reports for you tonight. Not intentionally all saved for one meeting, but that's the way it worked out. The LAIF performance for 22-23 was actually a good year with LAIF. This report was reviewed by the Finance Committee on September 13th, and we just were finally able to get it on the agenda for the board tonight. As the primary investment vehicle for the district, LAIF, or the Local Agency Investment Fund, is a secure and liquid investment option that is authorized in the district's investment policy. Other minor investments that we have, such as our general fund and our payroll fund at US Bank, are very minor and they're not included in the attached summary. Those interest earnings amounted to about less than $400 in those accounts. In this fiscal year, interest of $379,942.77 was earned based on rates ranging from 1.35% in the first quarter to 3.15% in the final quarter of the year. Interest is allocated proportionately among the internal LAIF funds, such as the legally segregated capacity and CMM funds. In this year, approximately $87,813 was allocated to the legally segregated funds, and the remaining $292,130 was allocated to the district's cash flow reserve fund. For comparison, LAIF interest earnings over the last several years have ranged anywhere from $36,623 as a low, and that was in 2015-16, to this year's high of $379,942. We often get questions about the security of this investment, and so for that reason, I always like to present information that comes directly from the LAIF California State Treasurer's website, LAIF statutes, excuse me, which states that money is placed with the treasurer for deposit in LAIF by cities, counties, special districts, etc., shall not be subject to transfer or loan or impoundment or seizure by any state official or state agency. And more recently, we have seen some additional investment options become available. LAIF, however, remains a safe and solid and liquid investment option for us. It is also a low maintenance option for the district. While other investment options such as the California Employers Pension Pre-Funding Trust, also known as CEPPT, and the California Cooperative Liquid Asset Security System, California CLAP, may yield somewhat higher returns. They do not guarantee return of the invested principal balance. And the district's goal has always been to protect the principal first and foremost, minimizing risk of any loss. Furthermore, our lean staffing levels do not accommodate the required time or expertise to properly manage the workload associated with a more aggressive investment portfolio. LAIF remains a tried and true option that has served our district well. And on page 24, I won't go over all of these in detail, but you have the breakdown of how That interest was posted among all of the different LAIF funds, starting with our main fund on the left, which is our capacity, the cash flow fund. The next one is the water capacity fund, then the wastewater capacity fund, and the CMM reserve, CMM redemption fund, and a CMM prepayment. Those are the various LAIF accounts among which we proportionately allocate those interest earnings, as you can see here. And with that, I will take any questions you may have.
Vice President Doolittle.
Director Roman, thank you so much for your this presentation and for the presenting it to us. I wanted to know, I have a couple of things. Well, really essentially is, I am interested in making sure that the district would maximize its funds, and thanks for the explanation of this. But when you say this invested principal balance, they may yield somewhat higher returns. They do not guarantee return of the invested principal balance. Is that the original balance, the original money, the original amount of money that we invested?
It is so yes, if, for example, we invest $100,000 and we're hoping to earn interest on that, we could actually lose some of that $100,000. So we could actually, risk our original investment.
Right. That's traditionally how investments work, right? I mean, at least I've never heard of one where it, saved the original, you know what I mean? But I guess, because these interest rates, they're just so low, like 1.35%, that's just so low. And I just would be curious to know what we originally invested. You know what I mean? What kind of loss we're talking about? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, what we invest fluctuates because we're constantly adjusting based on our cash flow and our payouts to CMM bondholders and, various uses of these funds. And the nice thing about LAIF is it's basically like a bank account, but it is at a higher interest rate than a bank account. If we were to invest these funds in CDs, which is something that we looked at some years ago, we actually met with an investment company and we talked about potentially investing maybe our wastewater capacity fund, because that is one that we really haven't utilized actively because we're building that towards a future project. And we determined that we would end up with about 8 new bank accounts that we would have to reconcile. And, not to mention the risk of actually losing principal potentially on those investments. The earnings were better. And I can, at some point I can bring back some examples of more specific examples of what we would be looking at. But it worked out to basically, we might earn an extra $10,000 a year. And for that, we would have to manage another 8 bank accounts, and we would have to be watching these CDs as they're constantly maturing and reinvesting them. So it becomes more of a full-time job to actually manage those. Does that answer your question?
Well, I wanted to know, so they do not guarantee return of the invested principal balance. Again, so is that when we open up the account, this was the 30,000 that we put in? What is this? This invested principal balance? That is what we originally funded
So every day that account is earning interest based on the balance in the account.
Oh, okay.
That's our
okay.
balance. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
it's not what we invested when we opened.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Whatever our balance is at that point, but it never loses money. We use some of that money, but the money does not, we cannot lose principal. We can utilize the funds and then the balance decreases. But if we kept the balance the same, it would only grow.
Okay, so can we just look at like on the page with the table? So right there, the water capacity, account number 11310, that's at That's at 1,224,000.
Right.
Does that mean that we can never lose $1,224,000?
That's correct. We can use that money,
Uh-huh.
but we can't lose that money.
Okay, through market. It's not like a market thing,
Correct.
right? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, I just, so yeah, just, I don't know, this 1.35%, it'd be, I wouldn't want you to go back to the CD thing, but it would just be interesting to see one of those played out sometime, but I don't want to take up a lot of your time. So, and then,
Before you go into another one, can I? So that we get into for me, the liquidity part of this thing, in addition to the fact that, there's a significant safety factor.
yeah.
With this treasury
Mhm.
thing. But if we're making a payment, I'm looking at the check register for the pipeline replacement loan, which is the Saddleback project, and also the startup buying all the
Mhm.
equipment on that 3,010,000. That's a payment of $367,890. And so the liquidity part of LAIF is that you draw the money from LAIF to pay that, or the water purchase from the state of California through Mojave Water Agency, that was $246,390. That's, you just draw that out of the LAIF account like it's our check account.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. We can access those funds same day if we initiate a transfer by 10 a.m. So that's very liquid, not something that we would have available to us. We would, we would be locked in probably to at least a 6-month time frame if we were invested in a CD instead. So yeah, that's a huge advantage, is having that liquidity. It makes the cash flow management a little bit easier and less cumbersome as well, because having those funds locked away does increase that workload as well.
If I may, something to consider for late is how safe the money is. If we went after something with a higher interest rate, there's a chance of earning more, which is great. But then the chance of losing the principal is also great. And if we lost the principal, then what? What's next? Where do you go and get that money to pay those wastewater capacity fees if we end up moving into that program, or Chromium 6, or whatever the project is? So the risk, former boards prior to everybody here thought they weren't as, they didn't want to lose, they didn't want to have the chance of losing it. So they're risk adverse when it came to investing. So we do earn less, but there's a lot of stories out there of cities and counties going after those higher interest rates and losing just about everything.
That's a great point.
Thank you. I just want to ask, you did this, the LAIF statutes posted on the California State Treasurer's Office website.
Mhm.
So who holds LAIF, the local area and local agency investment fund? Who's the owner of that?
It's through the state of
It is through this.
California.
All right, okay.
Yeah, it is a state program.
There's a board of some kind that monitors the thing and
Oh, yeah.
monitors the investments and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But it's through the Secretary of the Treasury, I guess, would be the.
Yeah,
That
the
person?
state treasurer's office,
state
right?
treasurer.
And they have a team of experts that invest this money on their side, so they have much more expertise than we would. And of course, because of the safety of it, the interest earnings are lower. But I think we receive a significant benefit for that.
And then also, we were talking about this 1 point whatever percent, but this year it was three
It's up
Yeah,
again.
amazing.
something, which was a huge
Yeah.
amount of.
Yeah, it's up
We
again.
have so much money with them. And also there, thank you.
Mhm.
There's that part too, where it's protected by law from the state impounding the money or using it for other purposes. It is protected by law from that kind of thing happening, where there's manipulation of funds to cover other things in government and all that. It's always right there. Anything further on that from anyone?
Did you? Did you have something?
No.
Oh, okay, yeah, I had a couple, just quick comments. I believe in life, actually, having experienced it in past years with a small city. I just want to remind people also that our banks percent interest rate is often 0.01. So, I mean, this is actually quite a bit more profitable than even just a bank. But I had a question, is LAIF unique to California, this program? Or do other states have this kind of?
Good question. I haven't really thought too much about that. I would imagine there are some other programs.
I would hope so, but
Yeah.
California, I think is on it.
Yeah, it's
This is
actually
concerned, yeah.
a really good question. Yeah, hadn't really thought.
Okay.
But my assumption would be that there's something similar out there.
Yeah, maybe like New York and some other
We
states.
may have been, an early adopter of this type of a program, and I would imagine that others have followed. This has been around for a while now, so.
Right, yeah, okay, thank you.
Moving on, 7C on the agenda, capacity fee report for fiscal year ending June 30, 2023, presented by Director of Finance, Ann Roman, once again.
Again, thank you. So this is the capacity charges annual report, which is required by Government Code 66006. We sometimes refer to these as capacity fees internally. These are one-time development charges that are used to fund the capital improvements, the infrastructure that's necessary for the expansion of the water system that results from each new meter connection. They reflect the property's pro rata share for the infrastructure costs that were built or will need to be built to service that new meter connection. So historically, the district has treated capacity charges as legally restricted to fund future projects associated with growth, such as expansion or upgrades. More recent discussion indicates that it wouldn't be inappropriate for us to reimburse ourselves for the cost of already existing infrastructure with the capacity charges that we collect. Yet in our recent rate and fee study, capacity charges were treated as a funding source for expansion or growth projects. So we continue to reserve those for that purpose. In fiscal year 22-23, the water capacity reserve did increase by $504,450 from 58 new meter sales and 14 meter size upgrades and the interest earned on those funds, up to a balance of $1,124,203.80. However, in 22-23, the district also utilized water capacity charges for a growth / expansion project, which was the Tilford Phase 1 pipeline replacement project. We used $395,166 of water capacity charges that we had collected previously, unrestricted those, and reimbursed the district for 38% of the cost of that Tilford Phase 1 pipeline replacement project, which amounted to the $395,166. The ending balance was, of the water capacity fund was $1,124,203.80. And we'll see that in our little flyer on the next page. Also in 22-23, the wastewater capacity fund increased by $329,529. And that was collected from among the meters that I cited earlier. 30 of those meters and 6 meter upgrades were within the wastewater treatment area and were subject to the wastewater capacity fee charges. So an installment payment also of $76,017 was collected from High Desert Medical Center. That is against their note receivable that on which they still owe us $223,831.32. They've been paying on that now for many years, and I want to say probably that was a 15-year note, and so we're getting really close to the end of that. The ending balance in the wastewater capacity fund after interest earned amounted to $2,174,245.53. And we did not use any wastewater capacity funds for growth or expansion projects in this fiscal year. I also included a little table there at the bottom, just with some historical information. I had heard some interest in that. So we can see there the difference between 22-23, where we sold 58 new meters with 36 in the wastewater zone and 14 upgrades, versus 21-22, where we actually sold 99 new meters and 53 were in the wastewater zone with 10 upgrades. In 2020-21, we sold 76 new meters, 45 in the wastewater zone, and upgrades were not being charged capacity fees at that time. That came into play at the end of 2021. And in 2019-2020, we sold 25 new meters with 12 in the wastewater zone, and again, upgrades not being charged at that time. So you can see how those quantities and the revenues fluctuate there from year to year. So it's spiked up in 21-22, and it's come down a little bit in 22-23. And I think when we were talking about this at the finance committee, it sounded like we were kind of on the low side for this year so far, for the year to date. I don't remember what that number was, but I want to say it was less than 10 so far, and we're in at least over a quarter. So, okay. And so moving on to page 26, this is just, I just made hopefully a little more interesting looking flyer here than the very dry report that we used to present.
It's very exciting.
And so hopefully this is a little easier to read. You can see on the left, the beginning balance, what we collected and what we used, the interest earned there in the middle. And then on the right side, the ending balance for the water capacity account, $1,124,203.80. The detail of the collections, which is something that is required by the government code, and also our disclosure at the very bottom of how we utilized some capacity funds in this fiscal year, $395,166. Any questions on that page before I move on to 27?
So this interest that was earned, was that earned through LAIF?
Yes. It was. So on page 27, we have the same, except for this is the wastewater capacity fund. And we started with $1,810,355.70. We added those charges that we collected, specified right there in the middle. We didn't use any capacity funds for public improvements. We did add some interest that we earned, and we ended up with an ending balance of $2,174,245.53. You can see the detail of our collections, which I should mention, this is the numbers, there are parcel numbers if you didn't recognize those. So parcel numbers and the amounts that we collected. And then again, at the bottom, no public improvements from this fund. And I will gladly take any questions that you may.
Vice President Little?
Yes, I just wanted to be, I have a couple things. One is, we increased the capacity fees recently with the rate increases, or was it? Yeah.
July.
Yeah. And so what was the increase? I just couldn't remember anything, or just general.
Oh, I don't know the exact amounts, but they were significantly increased. Probably 12,000 is the minimum. Yeah, versus the 7932. So 12,000, what was it?
$12,736.
So for a 1-inch meter, 12,000, over $12,000 versus it was at 7,932 for a 1-inch meter prior to that. And we are still, actually, you'll see on next year's report, we're still honoring quotes that we made prior to that capacity fee being increased. We're still honoring those quotes at this time for that old rate.
And it's what?
As if they submitted.
If they submitted before,
Yes.
yeah.
If they submitted before the change.
Okay, the paperwork, yeah. And it's worth noting that the district doesn't make any profit on this. This 12K is actually what we think it costs to do this work, correct?
That's right. This is for the greater infrastructure, the
Oh,
meter
that's right.
installation
Okay,
is
right.
charged separately, but that is also charged at cost.
Mhm.
And so this is their buy-in to the system, the
Right,
greater
okay, right,
infrastructure of the
yes.
System. But yes, you're correct. The intent there is that this is based on what, I mean, everything that we do is based on what our cost is. So.
And so then regarding this installment payment of 76,017, I know that we're gonna talk about well, anyway, let me just, so the that's different than the CMM bonds, correct? Yeah, those
It
are
is.
two different, okay.
Right,
So
so-
this installment payment, we paid for this stuff and then they're paying us back.
They actually put in a package treatment plant some years ago. And so this is because that package treatment plant, or I guess that's what we call it, right? That will become part of our bigger system at some point when we build that. They are paying those capacity fees as part of that package treatment plant. So it was a large amount initially, and they were able to, according to our rules and regs, finance that with us. And we do charge them interest. We charge them the LAIF interest that we would have earned on that money during that period of time that, that they owed us that money. And so, yes.
Means you have to calculate the fluctuating, wow.
Yeah. But so they're very close now to paying that down. They're almost, they've probably got about three years or so left on that, I think. 3-4 years.
That's all from me, thank you.
Director Jarlsberg?
Yeah. Thank you very much for this report. As usual, we're in good standing here, apparently. But I'm still a little confused, and I might be a little more confused tonight because of my confused head. But I'm still confused what the wastewater area is. Is that an area, or is it scattered areas where there's waste? I mean, I still don't understand when you say wastewater area, where we're talking about.
There is an area in the district. I think it's primarily downtown and around,
Where I live.
It's bordered.
the more densely populated areas. But I don't think it's really scattered.
Not anything we could really see.
Have it on a map.
We have it on a.
Well, other than a map, but not walking across the.
No. No, and so if they have a parcel within that that zone, that wastewater treatment, that was designated under the wastewater treatment strategy in 2005 or 8, something like that. And I think it probably needs to be revisited. There was some work towards that, but that needs to come back.
Yeah, I think, when I was in CAC.
That area may need to be expanded, or, I don't know. That was designed by the.
Okay, maybe in the future, I'll understand it more then.
Yeah, and that was, the engineers were involved in that whole
Yeah.
process. So how that was developed, I'm not sure exactly, but just like in Yucca Valley, there's an area that's subject to the wastewater capacity charges. If you don't fall in that area, then, it's not a factor at this point. But this, I will just mention that when the wastewater treatment facility becomes a reality, these wastewater capacity charges are really just a down payment, if you will. There will be an assessment district formed most likely to fund that full wastewater treatment facility, because it will be an enormous cost.
Right.
And so this is sort of the seed money to get to have a fund available to do the planning and that early work. that will need to be done to get that facility going.
And is this area generally commercial area where a restaurant might be or something? I mean, I don't understand why it's designated for that
I have
area.
May I offer something? It's because that the waste hits the aquifer because we're much closer to the aquifer. If you go up, there's way more land between in the aquifer. Isn't that right?
I think it's more the densely populated area rather than.
Oh,
the
okay.
heights.
I thought a USGS, when I attended something, told me that it's better for our aquifers if you live higher because there's more filtering.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
you're not wrong on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Sarah was suggesting I was wrong.
I think that the density is the where.
That's the driving force,
factor.
the
Yeah, the
density
density.
on how those nitrates filter down to the aquifer at a quicker rate. So the nitrates are the driving force behind the super.
Yeah, I always kind of thought it had to do with, we talk about restaurants needing their own wastewater systems and before they come in. And that's why we don't have as many restaurants. And so I got it kind of confused. What is its area covering?
You're
So,
not necessarily wrong on that either. Commercial does impact it as.
yeah, okay.
I did notice that High Desert Water was going and got a Bureau of Reclamation grant of $20 million to start their big to-do.
Are you talking about recently?
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about 2008.
Oh,
Oh, no, I thought there was something recent.
there is a did something recently, but it was a lot more money than that. And I don't know the details, so I won't speak to it right now.
Thank you.
Welcome.
To be continued.
Yes.
Sure.
I've got nothing. Thank you for the report.
Anything further, Director?
No, I went through this.
Just a comment, this, one of my things, the term reference to buying a meter or selling a meter, it's sort of an industry standard to use that term, but what it really means is somebody is opening an account for a specific property, and we will then provide a meter for that property. We own the meter.
Yeah.
So some years ago, a guy came in and he wanted to move his meter to another property, and the district said, no, you can't do that. He didn't understand why, so he actually appealed to the board. So we had a board discussion about that kind of thing. So, but I heard it today at MWA meeting at Bighorn was the term was being used too, but just as a point of clarification for regular folks.
Good point.
Yeah. Kathleen?
To that, I want to also add to what President
Thank you.
Polk just said, the confusion with the quote, buying a meter, we encountered and have over the years, been out in the public for 13 years. They believe that if they move, they can take their meter with them because they bought it.
Oh,
And I don't know where to fix that communication problem because we do it out there, but I'm just saying there is a misunderstanding as to who owns it.
It is clearly articulated in our rules and regulations that the district owns the meter, but I also agree with the sentiment. It is confusing when you are buying a meter, but you're not really buying a meter. You're buying water service, access to service. It is an industry standard, but it is, I think, a misnomer.
Is it more like renting a meter?
Leasing.
No.
Because the meter is the district's property.
It's part of our infrastructure.
Yes, but
Right, right.
it's really buying
Buying the rights to a connection.
exactly. But it's hard.
That's a good one.
Right.
More complicated.
Yeah,
That idea.
okay.
Maybe we can be a front runner in that. Changing the
RTC.
name. There you go.
RTC.
Rights to connection.
Rights to connection. Yeah.
Well, if there's nothing further, we'll move on to item 7D, Copper Mountain Mesa Assessment District Annual Report. Once again, Ann Roman, Director of Finance.
Thank you. The CMM Copper Mountain Assessment District Annual Report that I'm providing today, we've only seen, to my knowledge, something similar to this once before during my time at the district. This is something, however, I believe that the board should see on an annual basis.
Hmm.
And so I'm going to start bringing this forward. It will probably fluctuate as far as the timing, but we're going to try to get this here in front of you at least once a year so that you have this information to also share with the assessment district participants. So this, just the background on this, the Copper Mountain Mesa Assessment District was formed in 1996 to finance the improvements and construction of the potable water system facilities, including pipelines, booster pumping station, water storage reservoir, and necessary appurtenances. The bonds were sold to the United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA, who is the sole bondholder. The district's directors serve as directors of the assessment district, and the district's general manager serves as its executive officer. Thus, I think this is why this should come to you for informational purposes. And a little more specifics. In 1996, the district authorized issuance of $4.551 million in limited obligation improvement bonds. The bonds are payable and secured solely by special assessments on property parcels, and the special assessments are collected and paid by the district. The district, however, is not obligated, but at its sole discretion may advance available surplus funds from the district treasury if needed. The bonds bear an interest rate of 4.5% per year. And the payments, principal and interest payments, are made on March 2nd and September 2nd of each year. The current status of the bonds is that they have, as of 6/30/2022, an outstanding balance of $2,495,000. That is the last audited financial statement that we have available right now, but I did include here that as of 6/30/2023, the unaudited balance was $1,988,000. That came down quite a bit because of the bond call that we'll talk about later. And these bonds are scheduled to be paid off in 2036, so we still have a ways to go for those. On page 29, we have some information for you about the collection process. These assessments are collected from parcel owners via the county tax roll. Property taxes are due in December and April, and once those property tax payments are collected by the county, those assessment payments are remitted to the district at scheduled intervals throughout the year. We hold these funds in trust until we make the scheduled bond payments to the bondholder USDA. Delinquencies, twice per year after the county's payment due date, NBS, who is our administrator for this assessment district, they prepare a delinquency report and send letters to delinquent parcel owners. Historical delinquency rates over the life of the assessment district were at 1.25% as of 22-23. The initial delinquency rate for the same year was 11.66%. And basically what happens is there's no foreclosure covenant in the bond documents. However, unpaid delinquencies will eventually be cured by the county if the parcel owner does not pay their property taxes in full. Those properties may be sold as a county tax sale. And so the delinquency rate we see fall by about 86% after the 5-year mark when those parcels can be sold by the county. So I've included for you an annual report, an abbreviated annual report, but the full version is referenced here and available on our website. This annual report includes details of the financial status of the bonds, which we've briefly covered today, and includes the repayment schedule. So that amortization schedule, you can see exactly what those payments are for each March and September 2nd, and billing details for the parcels affected by this and the delinquency information. We also have the continuing disclosure annual report attached for you, an abbreviated version of that. The reason it's abbreviated is because you would have detail of all these parcels included, and it is quite lengthy. So you can see that on our website if you're interested in seeing those details. But that a continuing disclosure report with input and cooperation by district staff, NBS files this report electronically on the EMA website. This is the Electronic Municipal Market Access website, along with the district's most recent audited financial statements. And this filing is required by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. And again, we have an abbreviated example for you here in the packet. And finally, we have some information about the bond call. We talked about that a lot when we looked at the financials and the budget. And in September 2022, the district worked with NBS to initiate a bond call to be funded by an excess balance in the lay for redemption account for CMM. This is where we collect the CMM activity. Through this process, the district was able to prepay the debt principal by $375,000 while maintaining the existing repayment schedule for future payments. So we didn't adjust our amortization schedule. We didn't reduce future payments. We're maintaining those future payments at the same level as what was on our original amortization schedule. So that is so from that, we're expected to save the assessment district participants up to $128,000 over the repayment term of this loan or bond, excuse me. And it also offers an increased opportunity for future bond calls because we're now paying down that principal, and that would compound the effect of the interest savings. So this is part of our strategic plan item to maintain finance compliance. But again, I felt like this is something that was really important for the board to be aware of, especially since the board's directors are considered directors of the assessment district. And I hope that's good information for you. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Doolin?
Well, you mentioned that, I didn't realize that I was actually, on the, responsible for the CMM. I mean, I was just surprised to see that I was the director of the assessment district, because all I've ever heard is directors that are actually, that have that in their district discussing going to the meetings, but it sounds like, more than that should be attending this. So that's just one thing. I think, I thought it was pretty interesting that, that the Municipal Improvement Act of 1913, which was 100 years ago, was being used when we authorized the issuance of these bonds. So, I'm not the smartest tool in the toolbox when it comes to bonds, understanding this. One is, so when it says the district authorized the issuance of 4,551,000 in limited obligation improvement bonds, what does that mean exactly? Where does the money come from?
So the bonds actually are an investment that's available to the public. And so the USDA actually is the one who buys those bonds, and well, they don't sell them directly, but they're sold on the secondary market. They're sold on the investment market.
People who invest in bonds.
People that invest in bonds. Bond invest. So they're sold. There's a lot of specifications to how you can do this.
Okay.
Ratings, the district has to. This is one of the reasons why the district also has to maintain a good rating, credit rating, so that if we, it actually would affect these bonds as well. But if we were to ever want to issue more bonds, we have to have a good credit rating for that in order for the bonds to be attractive. And the other thing I didn't mention here that just sticks out to me as I'm looking at this paragraph is that this particular arrangement, I mentioned this in the finance committee, is very unique because we are not obligated, this district is not obligated to advance the funds if the assessment district participants did not pay enough or did not pay their property taxes in a way that supplied enough revenues to pay the bondholder. This district would not be obligated to advance those funds. We could, but we're not obligated to, and that's very unique in this type of a situation. And in fact, the information that I received is that perhaps it was an oversight initially on the part of the USDA. So it's something that when we look at potentially refinancing these bonds, it's a concern that we could put ourselves in a position that we would be contingently liable for any payments that the district assessment district participants couldn't make.
Okay.
Well, okay, so when you say the bonds bear an interest of 4.5% per annum, that is to the bond investors, right? The people that invest, they're making 4.5%. And what does that mean?
We have to pay 4.5%.
Right, on the principal or,
Yes.
and then that's where they make their money.
They make their money. They actually, usually what happens is they buy the bond for a certain dollar amount.
Right.
And that
It matures.
Right,
Mhm.
right. That dollar amount has interest built into
Mhm.
it
Oh, okay.
already. Yeah, once it gets to maturity. So I'm not sure what, and they can buy at different, they can buy primary and secondary bonds. They can buy at different
Okay,
prices.
all right,
So I'm not sure exactly what's happening on their side. But
okay.
I know for us, we're paying the 4.5%, or I should say the assessment district is because all of this, all of these, any charges related to this assessment district is passed on to the participants. So another question that came up in the finance committee was, or another discussion point was that the cost of the NBS being our administrator on this
Management,
district,
mhm.
yes, managing this district for us, that is passed on to the assessment district participants. And so it does not cost the district to do that.
And so when we report on the status right here, and we say the bond debt had an outstanding balance of 2,495,000. That bond debt is the debt of the CMM, the parcel holders.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. And it actually is not even shown as a debt on our books.
Okay.
It's reflected in the financial statements
Mhm.
from a note perspective.
Mhm.
It's disclosed.
That's why it's always
But
separate,
it's
yeah.
not, yeah, we don't actually show this as
Okay.
a liability, because it's not, because the district is not contingently liable.
Okay, I know that we're getting tired, but this document was 54 pages, so I didn't print it at home. I read it. And then I come in and I look at the hard copy and I write down what I, found. But so because I looked at it on my computer, I saw that the URL was not active.
Oh, it's not?
Yeah, so we need to make sure that those are active. I appreciate you using tiny URL. Yeah, it was not clickable in the PDF. So,
The PDF.
yeah, but it
Oh,
should be.
okay.
There's no reason for it not to be. So it might just be, something you have to tick.
Yeah. yeah,
And then,
okay.
so, one other thing, or two things. We should have a website and put in the newsletter how hard we work to save money, this sort of thing. It should just be a list because I hear all the time we're, saving 128,000 here, we're doing this there, we're doing this there. And I think people, that gets lost and people don't even realize it. I think people think we're profligate. How do you like that word? With ratepayers' money, and we're not. We, you know what I mean? It's very, so I think that's pretty important. And then lastly, why is it called a bond call?
It's just a specific term they use. It's basically a pay down, principal pay down.
Okay.
But it's a financial term, but it relates to those individual bonds that are out there that people own. Yeah, I could
All right, I can always look it up too. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all for me. No, that's all for me.
I clicked on that tiny URL and it did take me.
Oh, really? So was it not underlined or anything like that?
And you just click on it,
Oh, but it doesn't show that it's an active link. Okay.
She was looking at the report itself, but maybe not in the staff report where I have it.
Greg on it.
You got it from the staff report. Okay. So, yeah, maybe.
The treasurer one's working. It's just not blue.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not blue. It's not.
Okay, maybe that was all. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Dr. Jarlsberg.
Nothing on this. Thank you very much for an annual report. We look forward to it in a year.
Sure.
I've got no comment. Thank you.
Dr. Chick.
Yeah, on page 28. I'm a simple man. I understand mortgages, and when the principal goes down, I want to know, why is the principal going up on this? On page 28 lower, it says, 223 principal 132,000.
I see.
And it goes up instead of down.
It's a good question. It's because those last two entries, there, the 899,000 and the 874,000, is that what you're referring to?
Well, I'm referring to the years and then the principal 132,000, 138,000.
Oh, the principal,
145,000.
yeah, because the interest goes down as you're getting further into that amortization schedule. The interest that you pay goes down and the principal that you pay goes up. So that is how loans are generally like that. So they're front loaded where you
Just goes down right there.
Yeah.
That it's getting applied to it.
yeah, and you can see the payment in total
Yeah, the total
will go
stays.
down. So if you look at that final, that
Okay.
rightmost column, you can see the total payment goes down, but the way that it is allocated among principal and interest, that interest that we pay goes down, but the principal that we pay goes up. And that's what you want,
Right.
because that's
Pay
actually,
principal.
yeah, that's actually benefiting you at that point. They're not usually equal, so
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
So this, some part of the payment is, I don't want to use the wrong word here. Some part of the payment is withheld and goes into a sort of an emergency fund of some sort. So if there is some sort of a failure in the system to make a payment on the bond, then we would draw from that. So on this delinquency part, if it's 11% or whatever it happens to be, and it's time to make a bond payment, we make up for that 11% deficit with the emergency.
Reserve fund, yeah, we can draw on the reserve fund, but we actually have to report that. That's something that would be of concern. So when we, in this continuing disclosure report, which I just actually completed the one for 2023, the one I have attached is the prior year because we didn't have that available yet. But that information, that kind of information is disclosed in that continuing disclosure report. So for example, on page 51, reporting of significant events, some of the items that we would have to report are payment delinquencies. So if we were late making those payments, if we the optional redemption call, we reported that in this year's continuing disclosure report. Any change to the rating of the bonds, they want to know that. If we have to call or draw on the reserve fund, so number 8 on page 51, unscheduled draws on the special reserve fund established pursuant to the resolution reflecting financial difficulties. So this is all actions that would be required to be disclosed. But yes, that's why they're there. And we're required to keep a certain amount in reserve for that purpose. but we do have to disclose it if we had to use it. And we haven't had to use it since I've been in the district, so more than 15 years. But there were a couple of incidents before that, I understand, where we did have to draw on the reserves.
And four. So there's been discussion occasionally on, or questions actually, about what NBS stands for.
Someday I'm gonna.
I make jokes about that, which I enjoy doing, but it's actually the initials of the founders of the company,
Oh.
which would be Norman Nesty, John Bruden, and Raymond Stone. NBS. It's on their website.
Thanks for putting that out for us.
Finally.
I can give it to you later. Also on their website, one can subscribe to a newsletter of some kind from NBS, which they do other things for us also.
Yeah.
But you know, a blunt tool also when it comes to some of these financial things. But this is complicated. There's formulas involved.
Yeah.
I think a basic one is that whatever the cost of the bond is divided by the number of people that have a property that's within the improvement district. But then there's all sorts of other changes that can take place in this too. And also they will send delinquent letters, I understand, to those people that have not paid their property
Yeah, it says
tax.
that in here.
And there's also not appropriate, legal, but it might be, to pay a part of property tax. In other words, to pay the whole bill minus the Copper Mountain Mesa assessment thing. And so that gets the county involved actively in recovering that money for the bond payment too, because they can leverage the whole thing. By the way, I got excused by Kathleen from the market booth last Saturday, and I went out to Copper Mountain Mesa's community board meeting, and I made a report on this to their board. I hit the highlights.
Yeah.
I didn't opine at all about these things, just to let them know, and it was just a brief report, so I was able to get back to the market quickly. You have something to say?
I wanted to respond to Director Doolittle's request for getting this information out to the public. Traditionally, the state of the district letter from the general manager goes out in January, and that's the opportunity of the district to let our customers understand all the great things that got accomplished, either physically or fiscally. So that comes once a year, and it's amazing every year in just 12 months how much the district accomplished. So it's always one I look forward to. So
Okay, thank you.
I'll let you.
Okay, we're gonna move item 8 to the end of the agenda and go with to item number 9. For information purposes only on subjects not covered by the agenda, no action will be taken. The board may provide staff with requests for future agenda items. First is director reports, comments. President Doolittle.
Yes, I'm just looking at my notes. I wanted to share that I attended the Mojave Water Agency's tour, which I just very much enjoyed. We first started out with a tour of their hydroelectric plant, cost them about $5 million or so to build that. And then we stepped outside and we were looking at one of their recharge areas. And I just, I was trying to, because it was covered with plants, and I was trying to figure this out, like, oh, is it okay for it to be covered with plants? And it turns out they mow it when they want to recharge. And, but then I said, well, that's interesting, because JBWD, ours is totally scraped. And they were like, we love what JBWD's done. We consider it the best around here, and they'd like to copy it. So, and so I just want to share what I found. This guy told me, and I wish, I won't mention any names, someone else had told me this. What happens with the plants is organic matter causes a gunk or a film on the soil. When recharging, that has to be dragged to recreate the soil connection with the water. And so that's why we can't have those plants and stuff like that. So anyway, I thought that was very interesting. They have one thing that they have that I would love for, JBWD to be able to do one day is where this area is, this hydroelectric, they have something called a desert interpretive center. And it has decomposed granite pathways and signage. And I learned that the watershed for the Mojave River is at Crest Line in the San Bernardino Mountains.
Oh.
And the Mojave flows north, as do many rivers. So this idea that only a couple of rivers flow north is not true. Chub, the Mojave chub, was a native fish, which doesn't live in the river anymore. It lives in reservoirs surrounding it. And let's see. Okay, so then we toured the Morongo Basin Pipeline where that is. We saw the aqueduct and it was a beautiful day, but we saw where the Mojave pipeline begins. And the water from the Antelope Siphon aqueduct travels on the Morongo Basin Pipeline to this particular facility. And where we were, faults in this area looked like shattered safety glass from above. And they had where the water comes from the aqueduct, they then run it through this big column concrete building, and it goes through certain layers of screens, and the organic matter that's pulled out ends up in a big trash container trailer, and a company called Advanced Disposal then takes that and composts that. I found that the Morongo pipeline is boosted first at 247 and Pony Road in Johnson Valley, and then pumped to the Warren Vista Reservoir. And that's it. I mean, it was a very interesting trip, the tour, and I think I was the only professional person on the tour. The rest of them were residents and water nerds. And they served us lunch, and it was a nice event. And I think that's all for my reports.
Okay. Director Jarlsberg.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I was very disappointed I couldn't go, especially after she tells about it. I just medically wasn't up to it. Couple of things I don't recall having attended anything since our last meeting, so, but I did want to make a note that our board information, is out of date in the newspaper. Where at one of the pages at the bottom, they have, government representatives, and the board, still has Rebecca listed, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah. So, anyway, I'm not sure who takes care of it.
Yeah. They probably do.
And then I also had a question. I decided to check the website because I've been aware there have been improvements and I haven't had a chance to really look at it. And I was looking for the YouTube video, and was not finding it under minutes or agenda. And I realized that it is actually that little tiny logo that's a YouTube logo up in the corner, left corner. And I remember you saying that, that's where it was, but I just thought, now that we're actually having YouTube videos, maybe there should be a little notice to say, now, you could check our YouTube videos for recordings of the meetings. A little more obvious than that little logo, because I don't think everybody knows
That's true.
that's the logo of YouTube.
Or that
It's
you're
right under
supposed
the
to click
Facebook.
it, it's very small, yeah.
Yeah, so, but anyway, I just thought maybe like an announcement, now we have them, and then look for the logo or something, I don't know. Anyway, but I'm glad for the improvements and things that are being done with the website, appreciate it. That's all I have, thank you.
Director Short.
Yeah, I was supposed to go to the MWA TAC meeting, but it got canceled, so
Oh,
I did not attend it. Oh, it's always when I'm
Yeah, that's weird.
Director Fick?
Well, MWA canceled the meeting on me also.
Oh.
It was a regular meeting, but not a TAC one.
Oh.
But, and then I've had a very interesting.
on the tour.
I can't go into it or else I get in trouble, so here I am.
Thank you very much. When you Director Doolittle, when you raised the thing about plants growing in the
Mhm.
ponds and reservoirs and
Mhm.
stuff, I could invite Director Jeremiah to make a comment on what we do regarding that, regarding things growing in our recharge ponds and such.
So before we start recharging, it's called scarifying. So we drop these big blades into the ground and then you start making these nice pretty tasses to make it look like a crop circle in a sense.
Yeah,
And we remove all the organics out of the pond as much as possible. Our recharge rate is exponential compared to others. That's
oh,
why our Joshua Basin is a big focus on that. I think it takes 22 days for our water to, when we first start recharging, to actually reach the aquifer, which high desert, I believe, is 6 months.
oh,
So we really have soil.
Right now, so.
oh,
Yeah, so we do remove and we scarify, and we do that to all ponds before we just retake any water.
It'd be great if you could carve JBWD into it.
yeah, right.
People could see it from
Drive around.
save water.
As I recall, we initially contracted with somebody to do that for us, and I think it was budgeted for something like $10,000 a year. So when we actually bought the equipment to scarify, which is essentially plowing, that investment subsequently saved us $10,000 a year, which probably would have gone up over time too. So once again, there's one of those things that our managers do that is clever, it's perceptive, and it saves our ratepayers money.
And modern.
Do you do this with a 4x4 truck?
That would be good.
I do.
Yeah, there you go.
No, we utilize our grader.
Oh.
And it has the scrapers on the back, kind of like a dozer does. It's one of the pieces of equipment we bought to maintain the roads for our CRP program. So it's a dual benefit.
Every little bit helps.
Yep. If nothing further, we will go to general.
Oh, sorry.
General manager.
That's okay.
Okay.
Thank you. General manager's report.
Great, so you may have noticed tonight, there's a little bit of a facelift on the agenda. We're trying to make things better. Bring speed going meeting. We've moved tonight's items into a section called presentations. We didn't have action items tonight, so that's not on, but that in the future. When we have action items and presentations, they'll be in their respective category. There was some concern expressed that there wasn't enough information brought to the board. I thought this would be a good way to help disseminate what's an action item versus what's a report. So hopefully that will be helpful to you. And we're also working on another item, which is a project list that will be directly taken out of the budget and will be part of the agenda. So that you can see the progress on each of the projects that are approved in the budget. And we can talk about them at each board meeting. If you have nothing to report on that particular night, then there'll be no reports, but you'll still be able to see what's happening. So that's forthcoming as well. We had our finance committee at WRO last week, and one thing that we're finding is the finance committee is getting a little bit squished in that hour-and-a-half time frame. So what we talked about is moving WRO to an 11 a.m. start time. So if everyone's amenable to that, then we're going to try that for next month. All right, very good. The new website is in progress. Lisa has spent many hours working on it. The current website is not getting the same amount of attention. And that's one of the reasons YouTube is not advertised on there, because we are spending most of our hours on that new website. So it is forthcoming, and it'll be really nice on the new website because you'll be able to go to a board meeting. You're going to be able to see the agenda, the minutes, and the YouTube right there.
Yeah, good.
The current website
Okay,
doesn't
good.
have that feature, so the
Okay.
new one will. It is coming though. I promise. We've been working like crazy on it. Let's see. today, Jeremiah and President Flowen and myself attended the Mojave Water Agency's master planning workshop. They invited us just recently to attend. It was kind of a surprise to all of us. We didn't really quite understand what it was about. I think we got a good gist of it today. But they're doing a full master plan update for, it could be a new plan because as President Flowen told me earlier today, he wasn't able to find a previous one. So it might be the first time they're doing this. I'm not certain of that. But I was excited that they actually involved all of their partner agencies. So we'll be attending more of those as they work through that plan. And I'll bring any updates and use that because we also want to do a master update or and a CIP plan. So this would be a good opportunity for us to learn how they're doing it and see how we can do that in the future. Let's see, based on some feedback from the last board meeting, David, who is not here tonight, and I are working together to put together a customer service report update. So we're going to bring to you some interesting items that show some trends in customer service issues, concerns, and the good stuff too. We think we can probably compile enough to bring about 3 times a year. So that'll be next year. So far, we have taken approximately 568 acre feet of our water fiscal year from MWA. So that's recharging probably through the full end of this year. And this was really fun for me. Jeremiah and I attended President Flowen's other committee, the TAC committee, sorry, not TAC committee. Pipeline, thank you. Committee meeting that was hosted at High Desert recently. While we were there, we had some good reports, and one of the things that stood out was some information about USGS. So I had leaned over to Jeremiah and I said, we need to get a hold of USGS. I'd like them to come out and I'd like more information about our aquifers, about what you were talking about tonight, elevation and where's the nitrate issues and where are aquifers, all of these really wonderful, fun things. Well, the very next day, I had email landed in my inbox from USGS. And so we invited them out here. They did a 5-year sampling. They've been sampling our well 14 every 5 years, and it was on that interval. So they came out, we got to meet them, and we got just to pick their brains about everything about our aquifers. I learned that they did a really substantial report several years back that was not published. And the reason it was not published is my understanding that there's a money behind it. So I don't think the previous board maybe wanted to spend the money on that publishing. So we have the gentleman who actually wrote the report, who's retired now. He's coming out here in November, and he might be able to get it published, but of course with board authorities. So more to come on that. That's exciting, learning all kinds of just water geeky kind of things. But I think everybody would enjoy. So when I have more information, we'll be bringing more of that back as well. Tonight, I wanted to say a special thank you to Anne. You had a lot of reports, a lot of information, and what I noted is how calm, articulate, and detailed you are. So thank you very much.
She makes it look easy, doesn't she? Yeah.
I was like, that's very complicated stuff. And then Anne has 2 reports that I would like her to talk about, and then I'll take it from you after that.
Thank you. I'm going to talk again. Quickly, hopefully. So we wanted to report a couple of things that we mentioned at the last finance committee, so the whole board could hear this. One of the items is the payroll audit that the district underwent recently. The district has never undergone a dedicated payroll audit. We did this voluntarily. We initiated this. And I will say that our regular auditors do audit some aspects of payroll, but like everything else, it's a sampling and they don't look at any particular area in as much depth as what this particular payroll audit did. We did this with Cindy Byram, CPA and partner at Ide Bailey, who is the company that we're using for some assistance with our accounting work. She reviewed numerous samples of payroll documents, and she complimented the minimal number of findings that resulted from the audit. And she said everything was very clean and easy to follow. However, she did comment that we have numerous pay and deduction codes. And we always hear this from folks, payroll companies and such. And that just relates to the benefits and different types of pay that we have. The two findings that came up were vehicle taxation, which is something that we've known about for a little while, and we're going to be working on resolving that. That is an IRS specification and something that we really need to address. Also, there was a checkbox that was missed on the W-2s, and that was a result of a transition from one payroll provider to another. And we're actually in the process now of transitioning back to paychecks because we've had some issues with our Paylocity payroll provider. But so that was the meat of the payroll audit. That was good news, and I think it provided us some assurance. And did you want to comment on that?
I asked Ann and Autumn to engage in this process because our payroll is so complicated. And I wanted to make sure that, you know, we didn't have an error. So I was particularly pleased that we went through this, to our knowledge, never been done before, and then found out that we're doing it right. So it made me very happy.
Yeah, got a good A+ on that. So the other item, which is interesting, but a little more somber, I guess, is that in July of last year, if you recall, this has been talked about off and on, I believe. The district placed an order with a company called Apex Equipment to purchase a Pettibone. And that vendor requested a copy of the check as proof to ship the equipment. After some suspicious interactions with the vendor and some unexplained delays, finance discovered that Apex had used the check copy to create an electronic check payable to a different vendor name and processed it for payment. We disputed the check with US Bank within a limited window of opportunity to do so, and US Bank returned the funds to us. We subsequently filed a report with the Department of Homeland Security about the fraudulent transaction, and the FBI as well, I believe. And Jeff, our attorney, helped us with that. Autumn recently had a call with Special Agent Mark Della Penta from the Department of Homeland Security Investigations. They actually contacted us to follow up on this. And he requested all the documentation regarding this transaction. And he's gathering the documentation from the victims to present to the Attorney General, who will decide if they will move forward and prosecute this entity. He complimented us, however, on our quick action to identify the fraud because many of the victims did not detect this in time to recover their money. There were the suspects were based in the United States and set up a legitimate corporation and obtained a valid employer identification number, making the fraud hard to detect. He said a lot of mom and pop shops suffered the most because they got loans to purchase equipment that they never received. And now they're stuck paying those loans. So the agent explained that it takes a lot of time to gather all of the evidence and that the Attorney General will ultimately decide whether to move forward and prosecute this entity. So just wanted to mention that after this incident in finance, we made some changes as a result, and some other changes were made operationally. And so I'll mention in finance, we implemented an additional banking feature called Payee Positive Pay. We already had positive pay, but we expanded that to Payee Positive Pay, wherein the payee name is now listed in a file that we upload to the bank every time we issue checks. So when you sign a stack of checks, we're uploading a file to the bank that says we issued these check numbers for this amount to this payee. And that is a feature that really helps to prevent this type of a situation where somebody gets a hold of a check and changes payee name or the amount. And so that is one good thing that came about because of this. And I don't know if Sarah would like to expand on the other.
Yes, so we already have a strong vendor management system in place, checking vendors before they come in, before we do business with them to make sure they're a legitimate vendor. But this made us really relook at this, and we now have a very strong program. It's pretty arduous in the beginning. There's a checklist that's, which Dave was here because he had to go through one today, that you have to go through to really validate that these vendors are real. And we did do that. We'll say with the Apex, we checked that they had an EIN. We checked all these things, but now well, if we feel anything, with the hairs on the back of your neck standing up, we'll even go onto Google Earth or some sort of mapping and check to see if the storefront is what is supposed to be. So we really do vet our vendors, and this year in particular, we made sure that any of the equipment that we purchased, we actually went and saw in person, or it was already through a vendor that we had done business with. So unfortunately, this type of thing is more and more rampant.
Yeah.
And we have to do our due diligence and continue to do it. And then thank Autumn too, because she had the hairs in the back of her neck stand up, and she said, I don't feel right about this. And I said, cancel it right away, go do it. And she did. If she hadn't done it in that window, we may have been out those funds. And so it was one day.
What? Really?
Crazy.
So, yeah, that was a big deal. And back to that payroll audit, I know it seems like that's not that big of a deal, but if you have an error in payroll, and you have to go back and pay 3 years of penalties and fines to employees if you're mispaying. So I just want you to know how important it is to have that audit and to see that you're doing your money, because if you're not, you could really be on the hook for, bless you, for quite a bit of money for mispaying employees. So just want to point that out as well. And then last thing I have to report, which I'm very excited about, is Tilford 2 is complete. So
Right.
we are so happy about it.
Wow.
That was 8.5 miles, 45,000 linear feet of pipeline that is finished. Do you want to add anything to that?
It was a difficult project to complete with problem getting the material, finding the material, getting the material at a reasonable time frame.
During COVID, yeah.
During COVID, it
Mhm.
was kind of a
Yeah.
nightmare project.
Mhm.
The building complete, so the guys really worked hard and they buttoned it all up, so now we're just really waiting for the final sample to come back and it's done.
Flip the
So,
switch.
Yeah, I knew, yeah, we have brand new
Oh.
pipe up there now.
We had some of the rockiest area too.
I know that.
We had to rent extra equipment just to
Yeah.
do all the different terrain that was presented to us.
But that was a tough one. I'm really glad to check that one off the list.
Yay.
On to the next, but I'm very excited to report that. Other than that, that is the end of my report.
I just have a request I'd like to make. I would like to request a report or some analysis on the meters that we install, the change in the amount that the customer is being charged, because there was recently some social media noise where people are complaining, not surprisingly, about new meters and how much their bills are going up. So this just, I would just like to see, that. And I would also like to see if there's any way to link it with, any leaks or anything like that, because I have one ratepayer who they had a huge, they feel like they had a leak or something because it went up so much. But then after that, it went down. So,
I can add.
If I could, the meter change out program has been going on now for almost 5 years, and the new meters will register low flow. The old meters did not. So we are seeing that as the biggest complaint from customers, because before they could have the swap cooler going and it wasn't registering any of that water, and now it's capturing all of it. So there is a change. I'm not sure about analysis. I'll investigate your concern, but it is probably our biggest complaint. That was something that was going to go on our customer service report that we'll bring to the board, but that's the biggest thing that customers have complained about. But the thing is that they are using the water on their side of the meter. The water's flowing through the meter, and it wasn't registering before. So essentially they're getting 15% or in some cases 20% free water with those old meters, because it's not capturing all of the use.
So what I'm requesting is, one, that would be very interesting. What's the average percentage increase that we are now registering for all the new meters? And you can just pick a 6-month time or a year. You see what I'm saying? And then the other one is what's the percentage increase to bills for everybody with a new meter? Like the cost, what's the percentage, the increase in the cost? Because what I'd like to hear is that some people who got new meters didn't have a change. If I'm running air conditioning, et cetera. So you know, is every meter is every ratepayer affected like this? Where, you know, it's all of them are changing. It shouldn't be that way.
We can look into it, but I would say there's about, in the most recent months, there's been about 6 customers that we had to talk with that have had issues that we probably put in, you know, hundreds of meters.
Yeah.
So I think it's relatively low, but it's something that we can look into.
Thank you.
Director Fick, did you have a comment
I was
on that?
gonna say, at the end of the finance meeting, the latest finance meeting, we did have a demonstration of the difference in the meters. And the old mechanical one would get a little more inaccurate as time went on. And then the new ones, if I remember right, they have a laser measure. And so it's far more accurate and it's to a much smaller degree. So that's what and I did see that social media comment and I held it back.
You're welcome to
Thank
report
you.
it to Lisa or myself if there is a concern that we should, that maybe we've missed and didn't see on social media. I don't mind that. That's actually helpful. But I'm glad you brought that up, Director Vic. The old meters, if you want to come in, we have one. We can take it apart and show you how they measure water. And it's really water geeky and kind of cool. I enjoyed looking at it, but it's, you know, just a piece of plastic that spins around in there and it can get filled with debris. And once that happens, it slows way down. They don't speed up, they slow way down. And the new meters don't have that same moving mechanics. So they're measuring what's actually happening.
It'd make a great video.
It would. It's a good point.
On YouTube.
And we'll, there's one of the things that we have month by month, because the subject matter of the market changes month by month. And there is a specific month out of the year where we actually have a meter there. And we can explain to people how these things work and how they don't work also.
Usually in June.
A bit of clarity too, for people that may be watching this later on YouTube. A Pettibone is essentially an off-road forklift. It's better than that in that you could take the forks off and you can put a bucket on it too, which I think we purchased a bucket so that you can man lift. You know, we need this kind of a thing in the field to move pipe around, and also if we need to service a well where you have to take the motor off of the top of the pipe, I'll call it. We don't want to drop that. So anyway, it's a forklift essentially for use by the guys. Also, too, in using such a thing, there's a safety factor involved too, which is very appealing to me.
Need a little woman lift too.
Pardon me?
Yeah. Person lift. And it's big.
Yeah,
Big device.
one of these days that might be more appropriate. At the moment, we don't have females in the field, as far as I know. And also, by the way, when Kathleen, who, by the way, it was seamless when the fire truck and everybody left. She was down on her hands and knees demonstrating how to properly fold and interlock handbags and stuff. It was seamless. It went very well. Anyway, two of the 3 firefighters that were there were females. And the one male that I spoke with, he said he had a preference for working with females. It was easier. And then I looked up on the tractor too, and I saw that the ladders are aluminum now, which makes them much lighter.
Oh,
In the old days, it was a physical requirement.
Right.
A test that all firefighters be able to manipulate a ladder, and they were wood back then and very heavy. So now it's better for everyone, but the ladders are lighter. This is kind of stuff, when you pay attention to the water company, there's all sorts of stuff that you'll learn. It's very interesting. So that is the end of your report.
That's correct.
Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to pause this public meeting at 7:29 for directors and appropriate staff to conference with legal counsel. That's Jeff Hoskinson. He's been monitoring this meeting all evening regarding anticipated litigation. And we could close a public meeting with authority of the government code, which specifies why and when we can do this. It's section 54956.9 D4 of the government code, and we have one case. And we will adjourn back here, and we will convene back here at the end of the to announce any results from the meeting if possible.
Beth, I will send you a separate Zoom link. We're gonna go to my office.
Okay, I will look for that and be on there. Thank you.
There better be candy.
They would go in, you know, they're in the, along that wall as you go through the door.
So the board is back in session following a closed session at 7:44 p.m. And we have a report out from our general counsel Hoskinson, if you please.
Absolutely. The board met in closed session on item 8 as agendized relative to the claim of Carrie McCormick against CalPERS. The board, by a vote of 5-0 with all members present, rejected the claim, and general manager and legal counsel have been directed to give notice of such rejection.
Thank you very much. Well, that completes our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Carrie?